next hour. A look at what can happen between taxiing down the runway and the instant the wheels come back down to earth. From mechanical failure to human error, how we cope with danger in the air. It's all part of the human experience.
I'm John Donvan for TLC. You hear of small private planes that fly too low and end up hitting trees or telephone poles, but a commercial airliner piloted by a veteran crew flying squarely into the side of a mountain? In late 1995, that's just what happened to an American Airlines flight in the Andes Mountains in South America. It's hard to believe, but not as unbelievable as the fact that some of the passengers actually survived the disaster.
In a stifling hospital room in the heart of Cali, Colombia, a 6-year-old girl from New Jersey slowly recovers from a horrifying ordeal. She was a little girl who loved to dance ballet, but today Michelle Dusan can't walk. Her legs were crushed in the crash of American Flight 965. Her father was also on the plane.
I was very excited before I saw her because I don't believe that she was alive.
Gonzalo Dusan has not yet been able to tell his little girl that both her mother and her 13-year-old brother were killed in the crash. It was the deadliest accident involving a U.S. airline since 1988. High in the Andes, 5 days before Christmas, 160 people perished. Even as victims were being laid to rest, relatives of those not yet found waited at a makeshift morgue for confirmation of their worst fears. And at the site of the crash, a surreal scene as family members searched for the bodies of their loved ones.
All I wanted to just find my family so I can bury them, that's it, you know.
On the night of December 20th, American Flight 965 appeared to be on a perfectly normal course to Cali, Colombia. With the plane about 40 miles from the airport, flight attendants prepare for landing. The captain wishes everyone a Merry Christmas. 90 seconds later, Flight 965 disappears into the thick canopy of the Andes. The plane was flying at more than 200 miles an hour when it hit the top of this mountain known as San Jose. So sudden and so devastating was the impact that most of the aircraft disintegrated. The only part that remained somewhat intact was the center section of the fuselage. It's no wonder that hardly anyone expected to find survivors here. No one, that is, except the rescuers who climbed the 12,000-foot peak.
We talked about the survivors. There is survivors. There is survivors. Go, go, go. There is survivors.
No one knows how many people may have survived the crash, only to die on the mountain waiting for help. It was 8 hours before anyone reached the site. Dr. Laureano Quintero and John Fernando Bueno were the first volunteers to trek up this mountain. John Fernando discovers the first signs of the crash.
All over those trees in that area, there were suitcases, clothing, all kinds of things hanging in the trees.
As he travels up the mountain, he finds several bodies, but no survivors. Suddenly, he hears the faint moans of a child. It's Michelle Dusan.
I found the little girl right here, and I immediately went to look for something to immobilize her with. I see this box with a teddy bear.
A teddy bear?
Yeah, a teddy bear that records messages. So I record my voice saying, "Hi, what's your name?"
Hola, ¿cómo te llamas?
She suddenly opens her eyes and she smiles. It took my breath away.
Miraculously, there are other survivors, most of whom had been sitting in the middle section of the plane around row 16. There's Michelle's father, Gonzalo.
When I get up from that place, I saw two bodies outside, two people, and they were talking. And I asked them for help to help my daughter to get up from that place. And they told me that they could, they can, because they can walk. Wow. They can get up.
Also pulled from the rubble, 21-year-old Mercedes Amides, who'd been traveling from Kansas with her parents. Both of them died in the crash. And then there was 19-year-old Mauricio Reyes, an honor student from the University of Michigan. His own brother, Juan Carlos, was part of the team that rescued him.
Hello, hello. He's alive. He's alive. Call the hospital. He has trauma.
These are the stripped-down remains of one of the most sophisticated commercial aircrafts ever manufactured, the Boeing 757. More than 600 are in operation, and never before had one crashed. So how was it that on a clear night with a veteran pilot at the controls, a state-of-the-art aircraft could fly undetected straight into the mountains? The black box recordings show that 30 minutes before landing, the crew is busy discussing flight attendant schedules. The plane is on autopilot, following a series of ground-based radio beacons that help cockpit computers guide the aircraft toward the runway. As it approaches the Cali airport, Flight 965 enters the precariously narrow corridor between two mountain ranges. The beacons guide the plane's computer, but the pilots also need guidance from air traffic controllers.
The controller thought this airplane was cleared to do one thing. The pilots thought they were cleared to do something entirely different.
Transcripts released by the Colombian government show the pilots think they're cleared to fly in a straight line toward the Cali airport. Controllers apparently think the pilots have agreed to fly a different course, one that'll take them over the beacon at a town called Tulua.
The pilot said, okay, so we understand we're cleared direct. The man on the ground is given the opportunity to say, no, that's not the clearance you were given, and yet he says affirmative. This is a lack of communication.
The controllers repeatedly tell the pilots to report when they get to Tulua, and the pilots finally concede. Not realizing they've already passed Tulua, they reprogram their computer.
And so when they punched Tulua in, the airplane said, yes, sir, you want to go there? We'll turn around and start going there. And it began a left turn.
The plane's computer does exactly what it's programmed to do. It directs the plane to the left, circling back toward Tulua. 90 seconds later, the pilots realize the mistake. They take control away from the computer and try to steer the plane back to its original flight path. Meanwhile, the aircraft is descending straight into the mountains. An alarm like this sounds.
Pull up.
The pilots try desperately to pull up, but it's too late. The tragedy might have been prevented if only the controllers had been tracking the plane on radar. The problem is, in Cali, there is no radar. It was blown up by leftist guerrillas 4 years ago. American Airlines has issued a statement saying human error on the part of our people may have contributed to the accident. But late at night in a hospital room in Cali, the issue of who's to blame is the furthest thing from the mind of 6-year-old Michelle Dusan. Before she drifts off to sleep, she poses a more haunting question to her father. Poppy, she asks, when we finally go home, will I have to get back on an airplane? Please don't tell me I have to get back on an airplane.
The National Transportation Safety Board says that between 1984 and 1992, 45% of all fatal commercial airline accidents were due at least in part to pilot error. Weather accounted for 23% of the problems, and mechanical failure, systems and instruments, 18%. But often, any number of factors are involved. In more than half the crashes, some other person not aboard the flight was partially to blame. If a pilot's crucial mistake helped bring about the Columbia crash, a different pilot's skill and heroism averted what could have been an even greater loss of life when the human experience continues. On a 1992